testing. JB here. June 20th, 2019. Hope everybody's having a great morning. Post-Fed day, Thursday, and this is, I guess yesterday was the first Fed day out of the 11, or second Fed day where we closed green on the session. I was worried about a little digestion, that we would have some fluctuations overnight, and wake up this morning to see the future solidly higher. Europe is rallying, so yeah, all good stuff. And now you have the possibility of three rate cuts. Two rate cuts are pretty much baked in. I won't be surprised to see 3 rate cuts going forward to end the year, and looks like 300 on the SPY is coming at some point. So anyway, so first I'll talk about Allergen, and here the stock was at I think it was 112 2 days ago, before the analysts came out in the afternoon talking about the spin-off or split up or divestiture of their businesses or what have you, and then it went up to 120, added some calls into the end of the day, and then sure enough it gaps up again this yesterday morning. JP Morgan out with positive commentary, reiterating their outperform or buy rating or whatever the case was, and it just kept going. I didn't want to be in a position where I was holding weekly strikes into the Fed meeting that were up quite a bit, so I went and locked the rest of my 125 calls in. I'm not going to second guess the thought process there. I'd rather take the gains, take the profits, than see some crazy something crazy happen at 2 o'clock where who knows, the Fed could have come out with some hawkish commentary and the market could have sold off. Certainly there was a risk there for it, so rather be in a position to be able to add after the meeting than regret it later. So went and got those closed out, and then after the Fed statement came out, they didn't cut the raise rates, kind of kept the status quo, and I went and added some of the July strikes. It's a turd, right? Lots of debt. There's competitive concerns. Not going to really go much into it, but I think there's a possibility, especially if there's any positive news in the next week or two or a couple weeks, where they announce a spin-off or some other asset sale or whatever the case may be. I think it's a positive catalyst, and I think the stock gets back into the 140s, 150s. So some of the thought process why I added those July strikes. So that's Allergen. Not going to get too much into there. I already talked about the Fed, but it was only, end of September or even before that last year where there was talks of the Fed normalizing policy, raising rates at incremental rate hikes over the next couple years, and then all of a sudden we switch from rate hikes to no rate hikes to being patient, and now to cutting rates. Pretty remarkable, the shift. Some of that I think was the end of last year. You could see people were concerned that if the Fed keeps raising rates, there's going to be some risk to the U.S. economy, blah, blah, blah. And now you see a flip side of that where we're a total flip of policy by the Fed. So interesting stuff. We'll have to see how this all plays out. Powell actually answered the question of being fired. There's no legality behind that. I'm sure it could happen, but pretty interesting for him to answer those questions. But have to figure they're going to raise rates, cut rates in July. Now the question will be, will it be 0.25%, 0.5%? The 0.25% would be status quo, 0.5%, and who knows where we go from there. So that's the Fed. iRobot this morning announced an acquisition of I didn't even really look at the exact company, but it looks like a coding company for robots. Not incremental to their earnings or revenues, but I think what it does just puts the spotlight back on the name. You have the G20. We have the possibility of some more commentary coming out about the China-U.S. trade war and tariffs, which I think is all bullish for iRobot. It's been trading in that box. If you looked at the watch list, the chart I posted, it's been trading between 94 and 89 for almost a month and a half now. Once it breaks out of that, it's going to go over $100, and it's going to happen pretty quickly. So I still have my 96.50s, which are coming back to life. I may look to add some July 105s, 110s, depending on what it does here today. If it gets over 95, I'll be looking for some calls, because I still like the long-term story. Their next earnings report, I think they'll add more color on their mower, which I think is going to be something that's going to have an impactful, or a huge impact on their earnings going forward in the next couple of years. So like the iRobot story. Big IPO this morning, and you have Slack, ticker WORK, which I like tickers that have some kind of meaning behind them. So collaborative workspace company. Smartsheets fits right into that. Smartsheets actually had some news this morning. They achieved the AWS government approval or what have you. I guess they can work with government contracts with AWS. So I think these two catalysts, you combine them together, the IPO pricing of work being higher than expected, $26. I'm sure the stock's going to soar, probably 35, $40. I think that's all going to bode well, and I think Smartsheet's going to hit all-time highs again today. Still have some June 50s. I still have my later July strikes. I'll continue to hold those. If my July strikes get to 100%, I'll look to close those out to cover costs and ride the rest. A great story. I think it's going to be $60 in the coming weeks, so I'll continue to hold my Smartsheets. Last but not least is Tilray, and actually I got a message, so I should probably reply to it. But Tilray, in the cannabis space, I haven't traded it much, and even on the big move up, last year, certainly one of those sectors that kind of I didn't really get into too much, and then when it started to go, I kind of stayed away. But we had the KERN rallying yesterday, and I thought there was going to be some momentum shift over into sympathy moves and some of these other names, and Tilray is one of those names that typically has some huge moves anyway. Look at the chart, I think we get over 46. I think it has a good chance of getting over 50 in a very short period of time, which means today or tomorrow. So I went and got the 50 strikes, got lucky, spiked from 44 to 45 and change. I was able to close some out for over 100%. So I'm riding freebies now. So the fact that I'm riding freebies allows me the opportunity to have a little more leeway in terms of closing it out. So I'll probably let those ride as long as it holds maybe 45 or so. And I think it has a good shot over $50 today. I think that's it. Funny, futures are up 1%, and then you go, the first big article on MarketWatch is sell stocks at 300 on SPY. And then it'll be, if the market sold off 1%, it'd be a totally different article. It's funny how the headlines just cater to what the market's doing. And I guess that's what they're there for, right? So, I mean, if they didn't do that, then nobody's going to read them. If it just said, the S&P is going to go to 310 in the next 5 weeks, no one's going to read that. And it has to have some kind of, counterintuitive conversation in terms of what the market's going to do. So, yeah, take a look at Wix. I was looking at calls after its earnings. I passed. I'm not going to chase it here, but I guess Wix CEO was on Kramer last night. To me, it's a great story. You take a look at what's happened with Shopify, just going nuts. Because I think, this transition from brick and mortar to online, it's still in its early stages. And, Wix is one of those companies that's front and center. It has all the solutions to be able to take care of that transition from brick and mortar to online for whatever it is. Whether it's a retail store, it could be a personal homepage, or it could be whatever. It could be a blog just that people want to have conversations around. And Wix has a huge freemium base that they've acquired over the years. I don't know how many billion it is. Actually, maybe it's 100 million. I have to go look at the numbers. I'm sorry, just throwing things out there, but they can just rely on the customers and email addresses they've acquired over the years to continue to grow their base. People go from freemium to premium. It's a pretty easy transition, so that they're able to milk that. Not only that, I've already talked about Wix in terms of its moat, right? And you say, wow, it's just a web platform, it's a host. You can go switch your website to any other site, but no, because the Wix platform allows you to intuitively create your presence online. It's not like you can say, I'm going to cancel Wix and go to GoDaddy and port my site over. It just doesn't work like that, because the Wix platform doesn't work on GoDaddy, right? So all the information, data, everything that you've acquired, it's not like you just go transfer it. So it's pretty ingenious, in terms of keeping your customers, because they can't go anywhere else. So interesting stuff nonetheless. It probably goes over 155 in the next day or two. But I'm probably not going to chase. The one I was looking at yesterday, and it was 521 or so, right around the Fed, then fell back, but was Intuitive Surgical. And I think that goes into mid 530. So depending on what the 532.50s are, I may look for some weekly lotto calls on those. And I think that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back. Rock and roll.